with the issue, and one of the issues in healthcare, with the issue of wait lists, that you have to deal with the healthcare system. You just can't keep shoveling loads of money into acute care when the system can't sustain what it has now because there is insufficient support for home care and insufficient support for long-term care. Again, Mr. Speaker, in other words, there is no plan. Radiotherapy treatment for cancer patients, Mr. Chair. Wait times, they're still increasing. We do finally hear that the Cobequid Health Centre will finally be built after delays by this government, and it will open this fall. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, a question could be asked, does this budget provide for 24/7 ER service at Cobequid? We asked that question last year. We didn't get an answer. We're still waiting for the answer a year later. The minister has somewhat, Mr. Chair, evaded a question asked by stating that the facility will meet the health care needs of a growing community. Well, of course it will. Any facility should. That's a given, Mr. Chair. But will it meet those needs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? That's the question that has to be answered. And then, Mr. Chair, we have mental health, the forgotten health care component. It's given some support by this government. The question is it enough? And that question still remains. How about community health clinics, Mr. Chair? Are there resources allocated for community health clinics? What about the community health clinic in Bear River? Any support there? What about resources for doctors' offices that would enable them to stay open on weekends, maybe, and in the evening? Resources have been allocated, and we finally see movement on this, but not until 2006, 2007. So for emergency rooms, coping with an influx of patients who are unable to gain access to either an office or to a doctor, the message is just carry on operating as you are. There are no resources in the medical agreement to deal with level 4s and 5s that visit ERs on a regular basis and where the problem areas are. No measures there to deal with them whatsoever until next year or the year after that. Mr. Chair, perhaps what this minister would like the people of Nova Scotia to believe is that this healthcare budget has gone up. And because it's gone up 9.2% over last year, 9.3% over last year, because it's gone up, then everything will get better. But Mr. Chair, it can't get better without a plan that encompasses the entire health system. This budget is not going to lead to better health care because it can't happen without a plan. Mr. Chair, if you have the flow of patients won't improve this budget either. This budget continues to put money into hospitals without providing resources for those components of the healthcare system that keeps people out of hospitals in the first place. It is true. It is very true. And the former health minister, who should know better, knows that it's true. Because the former health minister helped put this healthcare system in the mess it's in. So that former healthcare minister should know that it's true. It enables patients to leave hospitals for other levels of care that you have decimated over the past 6 years, part of it while you were healthcare minister, Mr. Chair. Now, if you even allow patients, you can allow just a basic, Mr. Chair, to allow patients to be better treated in their own homes. Mr. Chair, you know what this budget is? It's nothing more than a PR budget. That's what it is. This government is hoping that the people will say, well, isn't this government great? They're putting more money into health care. And as I stated last year, Mr. Chair, that we would be back next year with a large infusion for health, no plan, that will enable government to shift the burden of costs from one component of the healthcare system to another. And Mr. Chair, I stood in my place last year and said that the healthcare system this time next year would be no more accessible as a result of this government investment for wait times. People are still waiting for surgeries in this province, Mr. Chair. They are waiting and waiting and waiting. You cannot throw money at the healthcare system and hope that the problems will simply go away. Throwing money at healthcare without a plan does not make Nova Scotians any healthier. And Mr. Chair, I see very little difference in this year's budget compared to last year. So, Mr. Chair, with those few brief remarks, perhaps now I could ask the Minister a few questions. And I'd like to start out perhaps with some shocking news that was I watched last night on television. And I'd like to know directly from the Minister, was the Minister, and why wasn't he, because he stated in the report last night that he wasn't, why wasn't he aware of a private hospital being built in Dartmouth?
I'd like to thank the member for the question, and at this time recognize the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. With respect to that facility, it's not something that they came to the Department of Health to provide any consultation on. I don't employ a fleet of detectives, Mr. Chairman, to be out all over the place looking at things. I do, however, understand that the Capital Health is monitoring the situation very carefully, and really what needs to be perhaps, Mr. Chairman, someone else wants the floor?
Carry on, Minister. Carry on, please.
Mr. Chairman, what's required, of course, is to satisfy ourselves that the services that are being provided are services that are not covered under the terms of the Canada Health Act. And that is what we will be extremely vigilant about with respect to this facility, because that is that's very important relative to what's happening. Now, the honourable member asked more than one question in his opening remarks because Mr. Chairman, he raised quite a number of issues that would be appropriate as Minister of Health that I should address, because if one were to listen to what the honourable member had to say and simply allow that to sit on the record without any response, it would be to suggest that everything that he had to say was complete and accurate. I would like, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman, to perhaps put in perspective some of the comments that were made.
Point of order, I'd like to recognize the member from Glace Bay.
On a point of order, Mr. Chair, I asked one direct question. The Minister will have his time to reply to any general remarks that I've made at the end of the estimates. I've asked one direct question. I think I've received the answer, and I have many more.
I'd like to thank the member for that, but member, I'm not going to consider that as a point of order, but would ask the minister to understand what the member has asked. Although, member, earlier on you did ask more than one question. So, minister, you do have the floor, and would you continue with your response, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The honourable member suggests that there isn't a plan with respect to how this budget relative to health care was compiled. And Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman, there definitely is a plan in place. It's called Your Health Matters, and that influences the direction and the governance of the Department of Health and how we formulate our budget and bring matters forward for consideration. We have in place, and it's a very important element of our strategy in terms of dealing with wait times. The wait time strategy project of the Department of Health, and I can tell the honourable member and all other members of the House that we will have in place soon a website which will provide very up-to-date and complete information to Nova Scotians with respect to wait time issues in this province. And that, Mr. Chairman, is very much a part of the plan that we have in place relative to the delivery of health care. Mr. Chairman, we have in place a nursing strategy. That nursing strategy has done a great deal to ensure that nurses that are educated in Nova Scotia, that the numbers are sufficient, that their opportunities are real within the province, and that is something that we're going to do. The honourable member suggested that there was not a single bit or additional resources with respect to the delivery of acute care in this province. Well, Mr. Chairman, if the honourable member were to examine the budget and the estimates, he would find that there is $102 million additional funds with respect to the delivery of acute care services over the course of the next year. And an important element of that excuse me, Mr. Chairman. An important element of that is the issue of salaries that are provided for within the budget and comes out of the additional money that's provided to the district health authorities. There is money there is money in the budget to deal with issues such as dialysis and the provision of dialysis. That is very definitely related to acute care. We talk about the need for additional long-term care beds. We make reference to our planning with respect to long-term care beds. That is an issue that is directly related to the provision of acute care because it eases the pressure on the delivery of, or eases the pressure on the acute care system by freeing up beds for acute care patients. So that's a very important part of our plan, Mr. Chairman. The purchase of diagnostic equipment and the upgrading of diagnostic equipment is a very important part of acute care. That is being addressed within this budget, Mr. Chairman. We have money for pain management, money for a stroke strategy.
Minister, excuse me, point of order, recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Mr. Chair, this is nothing more than a blatant attempt by the minister to eat up time during estimates. I asked one direct question. I asked in an opening statement, I had general comments that were posed in the form of a question. The minister has ample opportunity to answer a lot of questions under the estimates. I asked one direct question. The minister is simply wasting time right now, and I would ask that I be allowed to get back to the rest of my questioning, please.
A member from Glace Bay, as chair, I've been sitting in this position for 6 years now. It's been the tradition of this committee, and that's what we are, is in committee, for the minister to take ample time to give an appropriate response. Now, as chair, if I would detect that the minister is not speaking in a relevant manner, I would check the minister. But minister, at this point, I know you are answering the question to the best of your ability and you need a certain amount of time. But I would ask you, minister, to sum up as soon as possible so that we can get on with other questions. But I'm not going to take, as a point of order, respectfully, a member from Glace Bay. So, minister, you still have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe the purpose of examining the estimates is for members of the House to come to a greater understanding of how the money is being spent. And when statements are made that don't reflect completely the situation that is contained within the budget, I feel it's my responsibility to draw to the attention of the members of the House when there may be some misunderstandings. And perhaps that's all that the honourable member has done, is perhaps misunderstood some of the numbers that are in the budget, and it's appropriate to take time to make those points with respect to his presentation. And I will just several more points, and I believe I will have dealt with all of those issues. I want to point out to the House, Mr. Speaker, that 73%, or no, more than 73%, about 75+% of all of the money that's spent in healthcare is spent on wages. And honourable members make reference to the shortage of specialties that we have in various fields. And it's important for us, if we're going to be competitive with respect to attracting and retaining and recruiting specialists, healthcare professionals to the province, that we compensate them appropriately. And if you're going to compensate them appropriately, you have to do so within the realm of the North American market. And that means that every year there is additional pressures put on the healthcare budget in order to meet the salary demands. So that's a fact of life. What's interesting is, and I'll have more complete figures on this later in the estimates, that if you look at the period of the last 5 years, while the budget for acute care has increased by perhaps in the vicinity of 50%, the budget for long-term care and home care has increased in the realm of 200 to 400%, looking at those, and I'll provide more accurate figures on that later in the estimates. Now, Mr. Chairman, I think I've dealt with a number of items that were raised by the honourable member, and I certainly do not want to interfere unduly with his time in terms of being able to ask questions, and I will stop at this point and give him the opportunity to ask further questions.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's get back to the only real question that I asked. And the minister replied. I asked the minister why he was not aware of a private hospital being built in Dartmouth. He said he does not hire detectives in the Department of Health, but I don't know if you need detectives to see a great big 4-story building being built in Dartmouth and, not know that something's connected with the health. Do you know anything about your department, Mr. Minister? You don't know that hospitals are being built in Dartmouth right before your very eyes, and that eventually surgeons, or so they say, are going to be moonlighting over there? You have to know something about it, but apparently you didn't. But let me ask the minister then, how does he plan to monitor the services that doctors are now saying are going to be offered in that new facility? And they are saying that they are going to perform procedures such as plastic surgery, not covered by MSI, as well as operations for the Workers' Compensation Board. So how are you going to cover and monitor those services that are being offered in the new facility that you didn't know about?
Thank the member for his question. Recognize the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, the services that are purported to be offered by this clinic are services that are not paid for by under the terms of the Canada Health Act or through MSI. The member is correct to raise a concern with respect to how the clinic will operate, because we need to be vigilant to ensure that the resources that are available in the province are not compromised with respect to delivering of services to citizens that require services under the terms of the Canada Health Act and those services which are covered under MSI. And it is obviously the intention of the department and the Capital District to monitor those services very carefully, and we will be taking great care. We are also in the process, and this is not happening as quickly as I would like to have seen it happen, but it is moving along very well, providing new legislation which will cover the issue of private versus public health care in the province. And but I can assure the honourable member and all people of the province that we will be extremely vigilant with respect to the services. What we're talking about here is not something that is new in Canada. Dentistry is part of the service that's going to be provided in this clinic. Well, dentistry services are provided right across the province. They're not part of the Canada Health Act. So there isn't on the surface, there isn't anything that would suggest, that monies will be spent inappropriately in respect to the operation of this clinic. But the honourable member is correct to point out that there is need to be very vigilant, and in fact we will be very vigilant along with Capital Health.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know, the minister has said that he knew absolutely nothing about this facility. So in other words, the minister there's no government money going into this building, or this facility. There's no workers' compensation money going into this building because surgeries for WCB are going to be performed at the facility. You weren't aware if there's any workers' compensation money going into the facility. You weren't aware of anything whatsoever. This monster of a building being built behind the Dartmouth General popped up overnight, but you weren't aware that this was going to be a private hospital. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm informed that within the past month that there were discussions between my department and Capital Health with respect to this facility. It is not something that came to my attention in terms of its operation, but it was being monitored by officials within the department. I want to point out, first of all, the honourable member raised the question as to whether there is any public money involved in the building of this facility. There is no money being provided through my department or any other department of government that I'm aware of with respect to the facility, certainly none from my department. The workers' compensation claims are claims, and the work that's done around those claims are claims that have always been provided outside the terms of the Canada Health Act and the and MSI. They are services that are paid for by workers' compensation, and this is nothing new in terms of what's taking place there. It's a normal practice with respect to the provision of service to workers' compensation clients within the province.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Well, I'd like to ask the minister just to clarify then, because I'm a bit confused right now, because last night he told CBC reporter Rob Gordon that he only learned about the hospital when he was asked about it by the CBC reporter. And as a matter of fact, your quote was, when Gordon asked you if you intended to look into it, you said, "You've piqued our interest." Yes, that was your reply to the reporter. But now you're telling us here today during estimates that about a month ago your department did know about this hospital, that it was being monitored by officials in the last month or so, but that you didn't know about it personally. Would you clarify that, please?
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of Health.
The honourable member has quoted me correctly in terms of the news report last night. I didn't see it, but I do recall having said those words to the reporter. What I said in the House this morning is that the department was in consultation with Capital Health with respect to this particular issue. It is not something that had been brought to my attention by the department, and I can tell you that the department, along with Capital Health, are examining the issue and continue to examine the issue, and will, when they feel that they have something comprehensive to report to me, will bring it to my attention.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little more clarification. Let's be perfectly clear here. Your department knew about this, but they didn't tell you. So you're telling us, as you told the reporter, you knew nothing about a private hospital, but your department, someone in your department knew that a private hospital was being constructed in Dartmouth, but didn't think that was important enough to tell the Minister of Health that, hey, there's a private hospital being built, Mr. Minister, and you may want to be aware of it. So you're saying that someone in your department didn't bother to tell you that a major story like this was going on behind your back? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Minister?
This time I would like to recognize the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I've indicated to your committee, Mr. Chairman, is that the department were in consultation with the Capital Health with respect to getting a handle on what services, in fact, were intended to be provided in this facility. They were doing a joint evaluation of what was taking place with respect to that facility. And as is usually the case when they have something that is complete and comprehensive, then it is brought forward to the Minister for consideration. And I'm sure that, Mr. Chairman, I will get a comprehensive report of what's taking place there when that process is complete.
Thank you. Minister, recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Well, Mr. Chair, I find it disconcerting, to say the least. Disconcerting, to say the least, that health department officials, capital district officials, would be aware of something of this magnitude happening and not at least give a heads up to the Minister of Health that a private hospital is now being built in the metro area. And you should be made aware of that it's happening. Never mind waiting for the full details, but the Minister should at least be aware of it so that the Minister is not taken by surprise in the lobby of Province House by a CBC reporter who asks him, "Are you aware of a private hospital being built in Dartmouth?" And the Minister has to reply, "No, but you've piqued my interest." I would think that our Minister of Health should be more on the ball, and that the department should be keeping him more on the ball than the current situation. And it leads me to ask the next question, Mr. Chair. Isn't the Minister concerned? I mean, just a notice that this was being built, wouldn't that have raised a flag, Mr. Minister, that you could be concerned that this is going to be a drain on some scarce human resources in the healthcare industry already in this province? Let me say, they call these things pay-for-a-slice facilities. That's the nickname, okay? The doctors may call them an ambulatory clinic, but the nickname is pay-for-a-slice facility. And the doctors are going to be asked to moonlight their services in addition to their regular duties that they have within the health service itself. So aren't you concerned that this is going to be a drain on those already scarce human resources that we have in healthcare, Mr. Minister?
I'd like to recognize at this time the Minister of Health. The Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, the Minister of Health is concerned with all aspects of the delivery of health care, and the honourable member is quite correct to point out that if I had my druthers, I would prefer not to have had to respond the way I did yesterday. That is saying that I was not aware that that this facility was under construction for the purposes for which it was under construction. Now, I cannot, however, accept responsibility to know what every building that is being constructed in the metro area is going to ultimately be used for. That would be a rather difficult task for anybody to, well, you know, you distinguish what's a hospital, what isn't a hospital in terms of what is being constructed. However, the honourable member might have nothing more to do with his time than to wander around and wander through constructed buildings. I hope he wears a hard hat when he does it, and steel-toed boots, because otherwise the honourable member should also be reasonable in terms of what one is legitimately expected to be able to keep track of relative to responsibilities. Now, Mr. Chairman, I want to point out also that relative to the issue that he raises on the moonlighting, to use his phrase, that currently workers' compensation cases are all attended to by physicians that provide service to our public health care system. but they are compensated differently than our services or physicians who are operating within the public health system. They are compensated directly with direct payment from the workers' compensation. So there's nothing new here in terms of doing that. The member is correct to raise concern that the human resources in the province are not deployed in such a way that it is taking from our capacity to be able to deliver services to people under the terms of the Canada Health Act and services provided by MSI. And that obviously is the concern of the department. It's the concern of Capital District and will continue to be the concern of those agencies.
Thank you. Minister, recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to get into the trading of barbs with the minister over whether or not I know what a hospital is or whether or not I could recognize it's being constructed or whatever. I'm not the Minister of Health, Mr. Minister. You are the Minister of Health, and your Department of Health should know what's going on in this province. If there's a private hospital being constructed in Dartmouth, I would assume that someone somewhere within the Department of Health and or the Minister of Health in this province would know that that is taking place. And obviously I'm right, because it's been confirmed here today that your department did know about it and the Capital District did know about it. But maybe you just had some blinders on and you did the same thing that this government has been doing time and time again. You just said, I don't know, I don't want to know. Not interested. Don't want to know if there's a private hospital going up behind the Dartmouth General. Don't want to know that you can go there with cash and get operations. Don't want to know there, because eventually you're going to have to address it as the minister, that potentially slippery slope, and you know what that is, where we're headed when healthcare professionals will start leaving the public system to work at a private facility. And you can see the potential of that happening. If they're going to have surgeons and healthcare workers going over to work at this private hospital and moonlighting to start out with, there is the potential that eventually they will be gone from what is already a system that is scarce on human resources. So I want to ask you, Mr. Minister, how do you plan to address that potential slippery slope of healthcare professionals leaving our public system and going to a private facility such as the one that is now under construction in Dartmouth?
Thank the member for the question. At this time, I'd like to recognize the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and the honourable member does in fact raise a question that's appropriate and a matter that we will first of all, in the first instance, monitor very carefully what's happening at that clinic. Our concern is the same as his, that resources, human resources, not be diverted away from the public health system to the extent that the delivery of public health care is diminished as a result of the operation of a clinic of this kind. In the longer term, Mr. Chairman, we will be bringing forward legislation that will deal with this issue and deal with it effectively.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Glace Bay. Member, you have a little over 10 minutes left in turn.
I should advise my colleagues I won't be taking up the remainder of the 10 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Only because of the fact that I have a sore throat. So, other than that, I have many. I know the minister is sad, yeah, to hear that. No thanks for the lozenges. I'll skip the medical advice of the minister right now. Let me ask the minister, though, if he can please take me. He just referred to the fact that there's going to be legislation coming to deal with that. We've had the private MRI clinic. We have it. We now have a private hospital. There's no more daunting challenge in healthcare right now than the issue of wait times. These private clinics, these private hospitals are eventually going to put people in to get services that are now requiring people to wait in public hospitals for a very long period of time. How does the minister hope to meet those challenges? What's this legislation going to do to prevent that issue of these wait time lists being jumped in private sector simply because you have the cash in your pocket?
Thank the member for the question, and at this time I'd like to recognize the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And really, what the fundamental concern that we have with respect to this whole issue is that whatever services are provided in the private sector are not provided in a way that will allow people to jump the queue with respect to the delivery of health care. And that is the fundamental challenge. And the other challenges sort of flow from that, raised by the honourable member, and very legitimate concerns raised by him, that the resources not be diverted away from the public health system in a manner that diminishes our capacity to deliver public health. The honourable member is quite correct to raise this as a concern, and it's certainly a concern that is shared by us, and that's why we're in the process of developing that legislation. And the fundamental thrust of the legislation will be to ensure that people are not able to jump the queue when it comes to the delivery of health care.
Thank you for that answer, Minister. And at this time, I'd like to recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Just wanted to ask the Minister one additional question. If you could, it may take a little bit of looking into your book or whatever the case may be, but I'm interested in knowing how much money our district health authorities currently make from non-medically necessary surgeries such as plastic surgery, because this is what these private hospitals are talking about. And are you worried about losing the revenue that's generated, the revenue that would go to those hospitals? Are you worried about losing that revenue through public hospitals? I'm not sure if you understand the nature of my question, but they're saying, at least in news releases anyway, that what's going to be done here is apparently a lot of plastic surgery. And if that's the case, then it's what happens that's currently done in our hospitals, is it not?
Thank the member for the question. Direct that to the Minister of Health. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The honourable member again raises a question that the level of concern that we have around it will very much depend upon how a clinic such as this will wind up operating. If it operates in a manner that sort of clears out a backlog, even though there might be some revenue generated within existing hospitals, if those people are looked after outside those hospitals, and we are able to accommodate more people in providing them with the services covered under the terms of the Canada Health Act and MSI, then there could well be a very positive result in terms of wait times. However, the honourable member in his previous question raises the issue as to whether or not too many resources would be diverted from the public hospitals, and that's the challenge that's involved here. In terms of the revenue issue, I think one of the things that may be of benefit to an operation such as this is that indeed elective or procedures that are not covered under the Canada Health Act or MSI may be done elsewhere, and that would free up more time for procedures covered under the Canada Health Act and MSI.
Thank you, Minister.
Now, Mr. Chair, thank you very much.
And we'd like to thank the member from the Liberal Caucus, and certainly hope, member, that you're feeling better. At this time, I would like to recognize the member from the NDP Caucus, Sackville-Cobequid. Member, time being 11:38, you have 1 hour in turn. I'd like to inform committee that the time of committee today will be 1:18. So, member, you have the floor. The member from Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. and I welcome you to the chair for this, our next hour or so, talking about health and trying to get some answers from the minister. Definitely this is a great forum as an elected official to have the attention of the minister for such a long period of time and be able to ask more than just the normal 3 questions during question period. And I'm sure the minister is aware that, if he doesn't give a good answer, we'll just keep asking the same question for an hour. So anyways, when I was up earlier, I was talking definitely about an important project in my community, which is the Cobequid Community Health Center. And, I know that the minister answered several questions about that, and I'm encouraged with the answers he gave. He pointed out that the investment this year is about $13 million to that facility, and then an overall investment, I think, was around the $34 million mark. So, that just shows the commitment, I guess, from government, but it shows the amount of taxpayers' money going into this facility, and the people of that area and the people that are served by that facility now are grateful and excited to see that investment, because healthcare definitely, as I mentioned before, is an important issue to all Nova Scotians and all Canadians. And the question I get quite often in our community is, definitely when the facility is going to be open, and I understand the minister has some concerns with give me a definite answer to that. But other issues are, as I mentioned, the ability to increase the staffing level there in the emergency department. So I'm encouraged the minister answered that. The facility will be fully operational. So many of the residents of my community will take that with the encouragement and that news about that statement from the minister. But one of the most important things, and I think I know I've asked the minister this several times over the last 18 months, is really around the hours of operation for the facility. The minister in the past have stated that he takes direction from Capital Health and listens to what the area needs and the studies and the number of calls after hours in that area. And that's all well and well when you look at if you're just simply looking at data. And what government needs to realize is especially from my background, is that emergencies definitely don't happen just between the hours of 7 and 10, which is the current hours of operation for the Cobequid Community Health Center in Sackville. And the concerns I've heard from a lot of my residents, if not every single person I've talked to, is that question around operational hours for the facility. And it wasn't too long ago when I did a news pamphlet out to the community about what was going on in the community and what I've been doing here in the legislature and some of the things we'll see in the future. And one of the topics was the Cobequid Community Health Center and revolving around the issue of facility hours. And it's my understanding that once the new facility opens, it will continue to be operational with those hours from 7 till 10 o'clock at night. And people were really taken back by that, Mr. Chair, and we're wondering why, if we're having such a commitment and such an investment with taxpayers' money to build this state-of-the-art facility. The Premier said that, and I'd have to agree with him. I mean, it's a beautiful facility. It's really going to address some of the concerns we see in our community about access to quick and appropriate services when you enter the healthcare system. But they were really taken back and very, very concerned with the idea of such a cost incurred by government and by taxpayers that they're not going to address the hours, the issue around operational hours of the facility. So I'd just maybe like to ask the minister once more, has there been any decision, or are you looking at increasing the hours of operation in when the new facility opens in hopefully within the next 6 months or less?
I'd like to thank the member for the question and recognize the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I know that this is a subject that is of considerable concern to the honourable member. Mr. Chairman, I think the honourable member would be would not feel that I was doing my job if I were to simply get up and say, because it's the easy thing to say, that yes, we're going to open for 24 hours and all is going to be rosy. It's really incumbent upon us and Capital Health to do the kinds of analysis that are required to ensure that if a decision were taken to open for 24 hours, that the facility would be, that decision would be justified by the flow of patients to the facility. We would be in a very difficult position from a fiscal perspective if we were to take the decision to open it on a 24-hour basis without having done the analysis, and then we would find that as the facility started operating, that there wasn't the justification to keep it open for 24 hours, it would become extremely difficult to take the decision to then cut the hours back. And I can just imagine the tone of the speech the honourable member would have in this House if that scenario were to be played out. So we are not ruling out 24 hours, Mr. Chairman, but we are not going to take that decision lightly. We want to be sure that we have done the analysis that would justify the 24 hours in terms of the volume that would be there, because it's not just a matter of doctors and nurses being on duty in that time frame. All of the backup facilities and the backup human resources that you need to be able to operate an emergency also have to be there. And that becomes a very expensive operational item, and it's one that we need to satisfy ourselves is justified before we ever take such a decision. And I can assure the honourable member that the analysis that will be done will be comprehensive, and it will be based on anticipated volumes, and it will be based on what is anticipated would be the real catchment area in the hours from 10 till 7 a.m., in terms of people that would go to that particular facility. So it's an issue that is under active consideration. It's being analyzed, and I can assure the honourable member that the decision that's taken will be based on the very best evidence we have available to us.
Thank you for your answer, Minister. At this time, I'd like to recognize the member from Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And definitely, that was one of my next questions is this analyzing the data being done at this time? And I think the minister said they are looking at it now. But one of the things is you could analyze all the data you want. You can't predict when an emergency is going to happen or what time of day someone's going to need the facility, such as the Cobequid Community Health Center. And really, I think the data that you would receive won't reflect what the community could use or the number of people that would use that facility through the evening. Prime example, Mr. Speaker, and I know I don't like talking about myself in here, but I was playing in a hockey game last evening, and I actually took a slap shot to my arm, and as a healthcare professional, I noticed with my assessment that I probably should have went to the hospital to get an X-ray of it, but the one thing I did, and I think every person who lives out in my community, what they do in times of deciding on if they're going to seek that expert advice or require service for the facility is they look at their watch. And I looked at my watch last night and it was 5 to 10, and I realized that I wouldn't get from the rink in Halifax to Sackville to get an X-ray, and decided not to go. And maybe I'll do it after this, but that's a lot of the philosophy and a lot of the decision making that happens in our area, because they know there's such a backlog of people waiting to get into the QE2, and especially when it pertains to not such a severe or urgent case, such as maybe an X-ray for possible fracture or sprain or that, and people just decide not to go, or they decide to wait longer, especially when it comes around or pertains to things like suturing and like the minor things. Because I know, and I advised people of this many times over the last, in my career as a paramedic, when we go and assess a person and they say, what should we expect, or should we go to the hospital? And the biggest thing I say is, again, I look at my watch as a healthcare professional. I look at my watch and say, well, it's 7:45. We could go down to Cobequid, get you assessed. It doesn't look that serious. It's minor, and then hopefully you can get out and get on your way. But far too often, it's after hours, after the hours of closure out in Sackville, that paramedics in the community find themselves looking at their watch and wondering, what's the best course for this patient. Healthcare professionals are always concerned with, what's the best interest of that person they're trying to help. And I'm honest with many of the people that I've assisted over the years when it comes to if they should choose to go into the QE2 is what the atmosphere at the QE2 that night. One of the first things we do when we come on shift as a paramedic is try to judge the backlog of the Dartmouth General ER and the QE2 ER, so we know that what we're going to see when we get in there, not only for the patient but for a paramedic themselves, because far too often now it's the norm that an ambulance will do a call in this province, especially around HRM here, go to the QE2 and really wait for hours. I remember in the early days of my career, we thought 20 minutes was long before we got assessed by the triage nurse and progressed into a bed in the emergency department. But I speak to paramedics who are involved in the service today here in this area, and just in the short time that I've stepped away from that profession, the numbers and the length of time that paramedics are waiting in our emergency room hallways with patients have increased. It's not abnormal for them to sit there with a patient on their stretcher for 1, 2, 3 hours. There's even protocols and policies now in place for EMC that allows paramedics who are waiting in the QE2 for hours on end to get off in time, because what they'll do is a crew in the city here will come on duty and they'll say, okay, now your posting is at the QE2 emerge hallway, because they'll go relieve that crew that's in there and for them to allow them to get off on duty and hopefully get home to their families. So, the data you look at, you got to take into account, what benefits there are for 24 hours. I agree with the minister when he says, you can't just open it 24 hours tomorrow. And definitely it's harder to retract that down the road if it doesn't warrants that. But one thing you could do, and I hope the minister maybe could respond or give comment on this, is do a bit of a trial or look at extending the hours a little bit, especially during the peak hours. I mean, it does get busier certain days of the week. You can't predict when the busiest times are, but from working in the field for many years, I realize that there is certain nights of the week, weekends that are busier. Is this something that your department or your deputy has looked at on maybe increasing or extending the hours of operation out at the new facility when it's finished?
Thank the member for the question and direct that question to the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and the honourable member does indeed put on the table a suggestion that's worthy of consideration, and I understand that currently in the analysis that's going on, everyone is open to people are not stuck in a mold, let me say it that way, that they're looking at this with open eyes and prepared to obviously want to ensure that the facility is deployed in a manner that provides the best care in the most efficient manner to as many people as possible, and that is the objective of the analysis that is taking place.
Thank you for the answer, Minister. I'd like to recognize the member from Sackville, Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I think the people of the area that use that will be encouraged by those words, because that's the only thing we want is to really look at the issue, look at the investment the government is putting into this facility, and it's a real shame. And I have to say that people are upset. They're really upset when they found out. I mentioned that I put out a news pamphlet a little while ago, right before Christmas, I believe, and I was amazed on how many people actually called my office saying, "Oh, I didn't know it wasn't going to be 24 hours." And you know, it wasn't just supporters of mine. It was funny enough. I was attending a meeting that really was was initiated by members of the Conservative Association out there, and even those members, their initial reaction was that, you know, I was misinforming the public. Because when I stated it wasn't going to be 24 hours, they say, no, that's not going to happen. Our premier, he's not going to build a facility and not put it 24 hours. Oddly enough, they came back to me and said, well, you were right, and you know, it isn't 24 hours, and we're concerned with that. So, you know, I really want to emphasize the fact that people in that area are very upset with the fact that we're spending this kind of money, and that right now, the way things seem and the way things I think will go is with the opening of that facility, it won't be 24 hours. So just so the government knows that there will be, I think, public outcry when the facility opens and it remains at the same hour. So I hope that the minister is genuine when he says that could be an option to extend the hours to the facility, because I think that definitely could you know, indicate what kind of how busy it could be in that area if the public knew that it was open a little longer. But I know before we take that step, and I hope that someday, maybe I'm standing here, maybe I'm not, maybe I'll be back working in the healthcare profession at the time that the facility should be 24 hours, and hopefully the government, if it's this one or another one at the time, recognizes that this facility can play an important role in addressing the issues seen throughout especially throughout HRM, but it could really address the issues of hospitals in Colchester, a hospital down in Windsor, because what's seen now is, you know, the QE2 is a tertiary care facility. They receive patients throughout this province, and sometimes it comes down to other hospitals transporting those patients to the Q just to rule things out. Things like a CT scan of their brain to rule out possible aneurysms or strokes. And from my understanding, the new facility in Sackville will have a CT scan in place. So I feel that facility could alleviate what we see the other hospitals transporting into town after hours, because I know other facilities throughout the province do close down or do you know, cut the services offered, you know, in the later hours of the morning and night. So that's where, you know, we would hope that we could see the government see that utilization of Cobequid and really play a role in the whole picture of some of the congestion we see at the QE2. One of the other concerns that I want to bring up and maybe get some comments from the minister is around, before we take that step to 24 hours, is the concern that many of the staff at Cobequid Centre currently, many of the doctors have when it comes to them trying to transport or transfer patients into the QE2 system. Presently, you know, the facility closes at 10. They actually stop receiving ambulances at 9 o'clock to try to alleviate that problem of kind of getting as many patients as we can in there before 10, and then they're there till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, which is not uncommon. It happens a lot. But the problem and concerns that these professionals, health professionals have, the doctors and nurses at the Cobequid Centre and the paramedics, is that policy or the procedure of transferring patients into the QE2. And there's sometimes that the QE2 is overloaded and they can't receive those patients at that time. And they often go on divert, where they'll go over and say, we can't take any patients right now, you'll have to divert to the Dartmouth General. And ironically enough, even though we have one healthcare system, one capital health region here in this part of the province, the animosity between the emergency departments with staff when it comes to an emergency department choosing to go on divert. So I just wondered if the minister knows, or does he get updated when a hospital, especially here in HRM, like the QE2 or Dartmouth General, goes on divert, and is he aware of the problems in that service of transferring patients into the QE2? and the inability of, especially the Cobequid Centre at times, to do that, and are needing to stay in the Cobequid Centre longer hours with nursing staffs and doctors because they can't get those patients into the QE2. So does the minister have any comments about any awareness around that problem, especially in HRM here?
I'd like to thank the member for the question and direct the question to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we thank the honourable member for the question. I apologize that the honourable member for Glace Bay is not the only one that's struggling with a throat problem today, so I've got a lozenge in my mouth. But anyway, it seems to be a difficulty for me the last couple of days. We have a diversion policy in place within the Department of Health, and it involves all of the district health authorities, because of course there are circumstances that arise when it's necessary for there to be a certain level of cooperation between district health authorities or among district health authorities, and the honourable member in his professional experience would be aware of that. Those figures are made available to the Department of Health when it is necessary to have the Department of Health become involved in the process, and they are figures that are analyzed by the department along with the district health authorities, and it is looked at to ensure that no unusual circumstances are arising, on a regular basis, because if they start arising on a regular basis, obviously some things need to be looked at. So the answer to the question is that my department is certainly in tune with what is taking place relative to those issues. I would hear about it if it were something that required a major reallocation of resources in order to deal with a situation. But for the most part, those situations are accommodated by the policies that are in place, and those policies are deployed when circumstances warrant.
Thank the Minister for the answer, and like to recognize the member from Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would hope that, especially maybe in the future here, that the minister is aware when problems arise. I know that he has staff members that take care of it, and Deputy Minister may be aware at times, but that's one of the concerns a lot of healthcare professionals have, especially the ones I've come across over my career, the nurses and the doctors and the respiratory techs and paramedics and everybody, is that they feel there is problems in the system, and like the one concern I just brought up about being on divert and transferring of patients between hospitals and facilities, and that's one of the things that these healthcare professionals want, is to know that the Minister of Health, who is making and oversees a lot of the decisions, is aware of these problems. And I think that's some of the concern they have also, is that there's a disconnect from government and from what people actually do on the ground, the people that are working every day in the system. You oversee a department that makes and spends millions and millions of dollars to hopefully improve it. And I have to tell you, there is problems out there when, especially when a hospital goes on divert. I've been in the other hospital when, we hear that the QE2 is on divert. So healthcare professionals just want to know that the minister is aware of some of the situations that we see when we're working in the field, especially on the ground. If I may say, Mr. Chair. I know that one of the things we really need to do is hopefully, and I hope the government looks at, how we utilize the hospitals. Because, another example, and I know I talk quite a bit about the Cobequid Centre, but it's a passion of mine, definitely, and I know the potential we have with that facility to address so many issues in the province. And one of them is when we see the problems in our emergency room with congestion and that. And utilization of the Cobequid Centre could be as simple as, if an ambulance does a call in Clayton Park and knows that the QE2 has a 2, 3, 4 hour wait, or the Dartmouth General has a same kind of wait, that maybe that patient, if it's, and the paramedics are well trained on the acuity level of the patient, the urgency to see a physician, that maybe we could get them, if there was some kind of collective, analysis of what we see on a daily basis, have someone who's in charge of checking what departments are backed up, and maybe that ambulance could be diverted out to Sackville if they're not as busy, or diverted, say, no, go across the bridge and go to the or Dartmouth General. But see, that doesn't happen now, and I know you need to look at revamping the way dispatching is, the way these hospitals have their intake of patients. And I think that's an avenue that, like I say, the Cobequid Centre could help alleviate many of the problems when it comes to patient, diversions of calls in hospitals. And like I say, one of the major concerns with Cobequid is getting those patients out of the door when the doors close and getting them into the queue. One of the main issues is that, here we have physicians that work at the Cobequid Centre who are ERPs, emergency room physicians. Right now, there's a huge pool of them that, it's not uncommon to be at the QE2, say today, and if you needed to go to the Cobequid Centre tomorrow, the same physician would work there. They seem to work in each department. So the thing that, frustrates many, especially many paramedics, is that you'll have a patient that enters the system at the Cobequid Centre, goes through the triage, goes through the testing, and there's a decision made on if this patient needs to go to the QE2 or Dartmouth. And the problem we see is that, okay, if that decision was made, that patient is going to be transferred in, they call for an ambulance to transfer them in, they enter the system, they're already entered into the system, but then they have to enter the QE2, they have to go through the same procedure. They enter the QE2, emerge, they go through the same thing, they see the triage, they see the ERP. Sometimes they may see a resident first, who then has to consult with an ERP or a specialist. Then they'll come to the same conclusion that the ERP at Cobequid had made, saying, yeah, okay, this patient needs to be admitted to the hospital. Then they go through that process of trying to get upstairs to a bed. So is your department looking at maybe making that flow once a patient is entered into the system, like Cobequid, Colchester, Valley Regional, all these hospitals, that it's easier access to the QE2, so they don't have to repeat the same steps over and over again? Because in my view, an ERP in Cobequid, an ERP at the Q, an ERP at Valley Regional, they're trained the same, and most likely they work in the same kind of area. I mean, they work at different hospitals. Why can't we make it a little easier for these patients to get into the QE2 and get up onto some of them beds? Do you have any comments on that, Mr. Speaker?
I'd like to thank the member for the question, but member, I would like to know if you would allow for an introduction before I direct your question to the Minister of Health.
Yeah, no problem.
At this time, I would like to recognize a good member from Pictou East on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to all members of the legislature and the staff of the Department of Health. I'd like to introduce to you two members, a member from Newfoundland and her friend from Newfoundland, Elaine Rumbold, and she's with MHA Yvonne Jones, former cabinet minister in Newfoundland, who was the youngest member at one time, yesterday, to serve in the government of Newfoundland, and former cabinet minister and currently a member of the opposition, Yvonne Jones. And I'd ask all members to give them a big hand as they rise to. I hope you enjoy your stay in our beautiful city.
Crab fishermen must let them out.
I'd like to thank the member from Pictou East on the introduction. And at this time, I would like to direct the question from Sackville-Cobequid to the Minister of Health. Minister, if you can remember the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The top is getting gray and thin, but the memory's not that bad yet. The honourable member indeed raises a question that is of considerable importance in terms of the efficiency with which we are able to deal with patients who are in fact processed in one facility and then come to the capital district or are transferred within the capital district with respect to services. And that is the policy surrounding that is something that rests with capital district, but it is something that we're keenly interested in and are working with the capital district to bring about a change of that particular policy, because the honourable member is quite correct. Once you do the necessary admissions procedures and do the processing that's required, you should be able to move to the next step in the process. And that is the objective, and we're working with Capital Health to try and achieve that particular objective. The other issue raised earlier by the honourable member, I just want to point out to him that indeed from time to time I do get reports that show me where there are bottlenecks. It's not something that I see on a daily basis by any means, but I do see them. I would tend to see them if market changes were to come about that perhaps required our attention. But for the most part, the policies that are in place are policies that look after this, and I reminded my deputy that whenever crisis patterns develop, then I don't see many of these, so I don't get to see the good news reports, Mr. Chairman. It's only when your attention is required by them. So fortunately, I don't see them often, but from time to time I do.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I too would like to welcome our guests, and hopefully they enjoy the proceedings. I know it's probably not the most exciting thing for you to sit here on your vacation and watch, but I know you have an important job as opposition, as we do in this province, to bring awareness around some of the problems that we see happening through government policies and procedures. I want to change a little bit now and talk a few minutes on something that I've been working with over the last or been dealing with over the last several months, and that's the area of procedures not done in the province here. When a patient such as, and I'll give an example, and I won't use any names of people that I was trying to help, but I'll use the example definitely. A patient that needs a lung transplant. And we don't do lung transplants here in the province, and these patients who require and actually who are accepted into the transplant program out of Toronto, they go through quite an ordeal just even to get on the transplant list. And I was helping a young lady who was in that situation, who wasn't able to get that here in the province, and I understand the need to, or the inability of the province to do every procedure here in the province, and we want to go really where the experts are in that. But my concern with it when I got involved with this case is around the idea of what the patient is, what's required of the patient when they do get accepted into the program and go to Toronto. And the example and some of the questions I have is around what does MSI pay for? It's my understanding that they pay for the procedure, the stay in the hospital, and the medication in the hospital, and that's covered by MSI in our province. But what concerns me is that these patients, once they enter into this system and are on the transplant list, have to actually move to Toronto, and they need to be in a certain distance from the hospital. They wear a pager and are on call, just like an emergency personnel, that if they do get the word that there's a set of lungs that is going to come in, that they need to be in that distance. So this case, this young lady, who has been fighting and battling a long illness, has limited movement, is on oxygen, needed to go up to Toronto to do this. Could you tell me why is it the policy that, that whole procedure of taking this patient out of our province to Toronto or Ontario or wherever, why they only have coverage for their stay, the actual stay in the hospital. Why are we not covering the cost of them to be, that certain distance from the hospital when they get in, find themselves in circumstances like this?
Thank you for the question. I'd like to direct the question to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank the honourable member for the question. Obviously, it's a situation where people do indeed find themselves in difficult circumstances. Our responsibilities of the Department of Health are to ensure that we pay for the appropriate medical services. Whether we indeed have circumstances where patients must travel from the extremities of the province to Metro in order to receive certain treatments, and when they're here, we pay for the medical treatment that's involved, and patients find themselves in situations, and very often we hear of fundraisers in our communities where people are trying to raise money to help the family because they have to come to Halifax, or because they need to go to Toronto to the facilities there, and that's a challenge with respect to these situations. I can tell the honourable member that what we do is attempt to ensure that we pay the appropriate medical costs in these circumstances, and it's I don't in any way minimize the difficulties that families face when they're put in those circumstances, but families can find themselves in those circumstances traveling from the extremities of our province to the metropolitan area, or in some cases traveling from parts of eastern Nova Scotia to Sydney for treatment. Then people find themselves with undue personal expenses, and that's a challenge. And it's not one where we find ourselves in a position to be able to step in and pay for all of those services. I might point out that with the exception of Newfoundland and Labrador, our practice in this province is consistent with what takes place in other jurisdictions across the country.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it is a big concern with many people who find themselves in the situation where they have to leave the province. And it's a little easier when and I understand we have a large province that people come up to Halifax here for procedures, but it's a little easier to, I think, gain access to some of these organizations that help with some of these to facilitate some of these concerns when they do come to Halifax. But yet when you send someone out of province, it's harder for them to gain those same, they don't have the same access, I think, as someone from Ontario would have if they had to go to Toronto and seek the same situation. And it's a tragic case, Mr. Chair, because it really shows, and there's not that many of these patients that have to leave our province. I think they do maybe, we may have seen 6 or 7 last year, so it's a small percentage of people who actually find themselves, especially when it pertains to lung transplants, in the need of leaving the province and going to Ontario. I know that I was in contact with the Minister's office about this, and his staff members kind of stated the same thing the Minister stated, and also we were kind of pointed over to the Department of Community Services, and I know we're here talking about that, but the thing that concerns me is that here we had a lady who was on a fixed income, on disability, and was finding it very difficult to afford all the costs incurred for leaving the province for something that she had no choice in doing, because she had to go because we didn't do the procedure here in the province. So this will lead me kind of into the next group of questions. One of the things I tried to help this lady with was the fact that before before she left the province to go to Ontario, she incurred several ambulance trips to the hospital. She had 4 trips over Christmas, and then of course now has those bills. And one of the sad things was that, you know, she was receiving final notices of payment, you know, and somewhat threatening to go to collections while she was in Toronto fighting for her life to get this transplant. And I'm sorry to say that, you know, she didn't make it. You know, she passed away about 2 weeks ago. But one of the last things I was trying to do for this lady and her family was to try to address the need of trying to, you know, not go after her so much about these user fees. And that's some of the questioning I'll have now is around the user fee, the ambulance bills that patients get in this province. And I know I couldn't go through here and find out which line that's under. I just wonder if the minister could tell me, is it the responsibility of EMC, who manages the ambulance service in the province, to collect those fees? And do they keep those fees, or is that line in here, does the government get that money back in the user fees that they collect?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Health.
But we get it back. I understand, Mr. Chairman, that EHS does collect, but the money that comes in is shared between the department and EHS.
Thank you. The member for Halifax, Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So do you have that figure on how much the province has taken in with the user fee, the whole figure, and maybe the portion that the department receives?
Member for
I can
Sackville-Cobequid,
ask a couple other
on.
questions if you know, I'll greatly give time to get that information. The one thing that I was trying to help this lady with and her family was the fact that, you know, she couldn't afford it at this time. She was paying, I think, around $1,600 a month in Toronto for her apartment, and she was taking in about $900 on on a disability pension. So I got in contact with EMC, who I know has a department that issues the user fees and the charges for the ambulance services, and I received a notice back from them that they wouldn't continue that kind of aggressive attempt to recover that money, and that it was kind of generated kind of computer-wise. If a person doesn't pay a bill at a certain time, they get this letter, and then to the next step. But they advised me that, you know, under government regulation or policy, that they could not just eliminate or forgive an unpaid ambulance fee. So could you, Minister, tell the House if that's correct? Is there an avenue for them to forgive an unpaid bill?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Yeah. Back to your original question, 0405, the collection was $7.7 million, and 0506, it's 8, estimating to be 8, and what's that? That's percentage after we share. Oh, okay. And the sharing that takes place with the department and EHS is above 80%. When they collect above 80%, we do the sharing with them. Now, there are two things about the fee in the bill. Number one, there is an appeal process in place, and that doesn't seem to be the situation with what the honourable member is referencing. There is, and this is the challenge, you know, in circumstances such as the one identified by yourself, is for the, you know, the challenge is to make sure that the managers of the computer-generated system are able to get relevant information that will tell them that, put the brakes on. We're dealing with somebody here that's seriously ill and just not in a position to be able to deal with this circumstance at the moment. EHS does have a very lenient payment program with respect to these bills that are outstanding, and they do allow people to pay them over a considerable period of time, because recognizing the hardship that it does create. But the honourable member is correct to point out that there is a policy of non-forgiveness with respect to these bills. But certainly nobody will go without the service of an ambulance, regardless of the status of their account.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and definitely I've stated that many times in my career to individuals when they call an ambulance, and it's sad to say that some of the reasons why patients didn't want to come to the hospital or didn't want to take the ambulance trip to the hospital was because of these user fees, and it's usually patients that are ill and have severe illnesses that use the system quite often and realize there is quite a big large amount of money that is charged to use ambulances in this province. And unfortunately enough, not everybody has the luxury of having coverage, optional coverage, when it comes to their work or if they're even working. A lot of the cases, these individuals that are frequent users of the ambulance service and the healthcare system can't work because of their illnesses, and they find themselves strapped dealing with these user fees. And yes, in the correspondence I had from EMC, they stated yes, they'll accept $2 a month, and I understand that it could be acceptable to a lot of people, but it really concerns me when they say, but we can't forgive it. So I would hope that the minister will look at an avenue of trying to give EMC that ability to analyze, the data they have with the user, with the patient that they're dealing with, in order for them to maybe possibly forgive that. Could the minister tell us, are you, I know there's been a lot of concern on our caucus about user fees and that. Are you looking at appointing anybody to look at ambulance fees in the province or user fees in the province?
Thank you, Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The ambulance fees are in fact reviewed on an annual basis, and I think it's I appreciate the concerns being put forward by the honourable member, but it's appropriate, I think, for the House to understand that in 04-05, the average cost per trip of an ambulance is $816. The amount that individuals would pay, for instance, being transferred from the scene to a hospital is $120. So there is a tremendous subsidy involved with respect to the provision of that service within the province, and that subsidy is paid for by the taxpayers of the province. I don't, that's not to say that $120 isn't a significant bill for some people. I grant you that it is, but it also needs to be recognized that the service that is being provided is a very expensive service. It's probably the best service that exists in Canada, but and the honourable member would be quite familiar with it. But you don't provide a service like that, cheaply. It comes at quite a price, $816, the average cost per trip this year. So there is also some discussion and I believe a commitment on my part to have someone of stature to have a formal look at outside of the Department of Health and EHS at ambulance rates, and following the session, I will be putting that process in place.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that, I think covers my next question is, are you going to appoint somebody? I understand the cost that's involved in the system we have. I mean, we do have a state-of-the-art system, and there is a cost involved, but what we have to realize is we have to give, or there has to be an avenue for those people in our province, and there's many of them who are on low income, fixed income, or no income, that an avenue for them to be not affected severely, especially with some of the user fees. Mr. Speaker, that your government has raised user fees quite often over the last several years. When I started in the ambulance service, user fees were $60, so they've more than doubled. And I hope that you realize how much of an impact that has on some of the residents of the province. So I just have a few more questions, and then I'm going to give the remaining 10 minutes or so to my colleague. The one, and she advised me it's 10 minutes now, so I'll have one more question. I know that we announced, or you announced, that the creation of a college for the paramedics is going through. I know it's a piece of legislation now. Did you forecast or estimate the revenue that may come with the charge of a professional fee to the paramedics? Have you looked at how much revenue the province is going to take in? Because realistically, that's one of the components of creating a college, is to self-fund registration and licensing, and paramedics know that that's coming. So have you forecast, or do you have any numbers on what you think, how much revenue will be taken in by the paramedics?
Thank you, the Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That question is really a question that will be addressed by the college itself, because they will have the authority to set the fees, and they will have to set those fees based on their anticipated expenditures. But I understand that there is money that we currently make available to this process, and that money will continue to be made available. But we don't know the precise numbers. That is something that the college will have to establish when it's up and running.
Thank you for the answer, Minister, and just would like to inform the member from Sackville-Cobequid that you have only 8 minutes left in turn. I'd like to recognize the member from Sackville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and I know my member from Dartmouth East has a few questions, and I apologize for taking up most of her time.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the member from Dartmouth East. Member, you have approximately 7 minutes in turn.
Hey.
You have the floor.
All right, well, I'm just going to jump right in. I do have a number of questions that I guess I'll have to wait for another day and steal some time from one of the other members. This week I did ask a question in the House in regards to self-managed attendant care, and there's a constituent that lives in Dartmouth East by the name of Bob Venus, who has been very active in pursuing this issue with the government and through myself. And as you saw, there were people here in attendance yesterday, disabled persons that want to take this issue up with the government. The issue, and I'll just go over a few of the facts as I understand it, is that the amount of money set out in this year's budget is around, I guess it's $500,000, which would equate to possibly extending the service of the self-managed attendance care to maybe 20 people. The problem here is that people that are in their homes are at the beck and call, really, of these home care attendants who don't come out into the homes. They don't get there until 8 o'clock in the morning. And so disabled people that are in their homes and that really would prefer to be out in the community on a daily basis are really stuck with these schedules that these home care attendants put on them. It's not flexible right now with... Oh.
Yes, I would like to ask for order in the committee. Thank you. Dartmouth East, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another thing that holds these people down is that when they do try and get out of their homes and they have to schedule an appointment with the assessor-bus, and if something crops up in the meantime and they have to cancel that, and you have to make these appointments somewhere around 2 weeks before your actual trip, then they are charged a $50 cancellation fee. So this is another part of that whole home care issue. Bob Venus is a person that has a lot to offer the people of Dartmouth East, the people of Dartmouth, the people of Nova Scotia. And he is an example of somebody that wants to have more flexibility in his life. He wants to contribute to society and the community that he lives in. We've got, the Department of Health Promotion, that every time you listen to them, they're always talking about getting out in your community. Let's design trail systems so that people can move around their communities. But what's happening is the department is not making this possible for people like Bob Venus. So yesterday I did notice in the newspaper that the Honourable Minister of Health made some statements to the fact of that he was examining types of continuing care, and that perhaps many other people could use that self-managed type of attendance, but that there would be a cost involved in that. So I'm going to lead up to my question now is if he's looking at examining these types of continuing care, and the pilot project for the self-managed attendant care has been underway since 1994, which to my calculations has been 11 years, how long will it take this department to collect that information? That's my question.
Thank the member from Dartmouth East for the question, and we'll direct the question to the Minister of Health. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and the honourable member is correct. It is 11 years. The information that we are collecting is not related to the analysis of the operation of that program over 11 years, but rather it relates to the range of self-care, of home care options, whether it be self-care or home care provided by others. The analysis of the range of options that we should be attempting to provide within the province. So that is the reference that I made when quoted in the press. It was related to that analysis that is taking place as a result of the province-wide consultations. The honourable member does point out that $500,000 does provide this opportunity to a limited number of people. We will take some time to put in place the appropriate guidelines surrounding this, and it's not going to take a long time, but it will take some time to put those guidelines in place so that when the program is up and running, it will probably accommodate more than the number of people identified by the honourable member, and that of course implies that there would have to be additional funds provided for this program in a future year in order to accommodate the number of people that would get involved in the take-up of the program this year. So there are two things. One is the fact that as the program rolls out and gets fully implemented, we will need to look at the number of people that are being provided the service this year and ensure that they're cared for into the future. The second thing that will influence our decision making will be the consultation that is taking place on a province-wide basis and allowing us to understand the nature of what's needed to be provided. I understand I'm cutting into the honourable member's desire to ask another question, so I'll yield the floor.
Well, thank you, Minister. The member from Dartmouth East has approximately 30 seconds, which is entitled to your caucus. If you would like to finish up with one quick closing comment, then I'm going to recognize the Liberal caucus.
Thank you. I thank the Honourable Minister for his comments, and I guess we'll just have to look forward to more money in the future.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the member from Dartmouth East from the NDP caucus. At this time, I'd like to recognize the member from Annapolis from the Liberal caucus. Sir, your time being 12:38, Committee's business will end for the day at 1:18. So you have the floor, member. Thank you.
Hey, Chair. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to the Minister and his staff from my office and from the people of Annapolis when we have contacted your department dealing with issues related to health. You've been timely in getting back to us, and not always with the answer we might like, but I do want to express that on behalf of the people of Annapolis, our appreciation for that. It's one of the interesting things that has happened here has been the self-managed attendant care, and as you are well aware, that's an issue that I brought to this floor regarding a constituent of mine, and how the passion that I have towards this program. Recently, when in the budget bulletin, there was talk of the $500,000, and there was a mention of a new program. And I'm wondering why there is a new program and why we wouldn't be just putting that money into the existing program that has been there now for 11 years.
Thank you for the question, and recognize the Minister of Health. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the member for asking that question because it provides me an opportunity to clear up any misunderstanding that might exist around that. The program that he references that has been there for 11 years was a pilot. Pilots come to an end. So this pilot will get incorporated into the new program. And so that we will, it'll be more than a $500,000 program. It will be a $775,000 program approximately, because it will incorporate those clients that are currently being served, who were served previously under the pilot. Correct in that?
Thank you for the answer, Minister. I'd like to recognize the member from Annapolis.
That program, recognizing it's been a pilot and it's been there for 11 years and has been administered by the Independent Living Society. Who is going to be administering this new program, and when will this new program come into effect?
Thank you, member, for the question. The Minister of Health.
Criteria that was set before. Immediately.
Minister.
The program will be administered by the Department of Health, and we hope to have that rolled out as quickly as possible. As I indicated before, it's not something that we anticipate taking a long period of time to be able to do, but it will be a combined. The resources will be combined of the $275,000 approximately that is currently being spent, and the $500,000 new money.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Annapolis.
Thank you, Chair. In the budget bulletin, it mentioned when you were talking about the new program that it was for seniors and people with disabilities. Your Director of Continuing Care since then has said that there was an error in that, and that the new program does not include seniors. It is directed towards people with disabilities. Could you clear that up for us? Is that correct? Or?
Thank you for the question. The Minister of Health.
Other programs that are available.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps the better description of the program should have been that we will care for people requiring that service regardless of age. That it will be the people in need of the service will be the main criteria that would be applied.
Thank you. The member from Annapolis.
Could the minister give some indication? I know presently now there are 9 people still left in the pilot project. Originally there were 10. Can you give me any indication of how many this new people will be brought into the program under this $500,000, and whether or not this program will be offered province-wide beginning immediately, or is it just going to be something focused on Metro?
Thank you. The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It will be a province-wide offering, and the number of additional clients we anticipate being in the vicinity of 20. Depends on when we're able to get it fully operational, and depends also on the services required by clients. That will vary, and that might impact the number slightly one way or the other.
The member from Annapolis.
Given the fact that the home care budget last year was underspent, and considering that the Independent Living Society was looking for 1.8 million, I believe it was, to implement this program across the province fully to get geared up for this year, I'm wondering why we've chosen the 500,000 and have not taken the organization that has actually been shepherding this project for the last 11 years and providing a valuable service to people with disabilities. Why we didn't take their lead and push this program forward.
Thank you for the question. Direct the question to the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think what we need to keep in mind with respect to the home care services is that if we had the human resources to provide that service, then that money would have been completely spent, and we want to strive to provide as much of that service as possible, and we're moving in that direction. So the transference of the money is not occurring. The money that we have committed to the program this year is a beginning, and as I referenced earlier, one of the things we're involved in is the province-wide consultation relative to the whole question of continuing care, and an important element of that, indeed perhaps the most important element in terms of the long-term use of resources within the province, is our capacity to be able to have people remain in their homes longer. And as a result of that initiative and that examination, we may very well get recommendations that will cause us to look at this program in an enhanced manner in the future following that report. So we very much view this as an initial step, but did not want to predict what would be forthcoming from the province-wide analysis that is taking place, consultation.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Annapolis.
Clarification, I didn't quite hear what you said when you said why your home care budget was underspent.
Excuse me, the Minister of Health.
It relates to the availability of personnel to be able to deliver the service.
The member from Annapolis.
I think that leads into why this program is so valuable. Presently, there are people who are providing their own care. They're hiring their own personnel. What we are requiring, what we're asking for, are that people who are existently receiving home care services from the province to be able to be moved out and have their own decisions made by themselves, and they'll do the hiring of the personnel. That would also take the pressure off your system, not only resource pressure, but on the personnel issue which you're talking about. So it goes back into when the Independent Living Society asked for that 1.8 million, why that wouldn't have come forward. Because some of that money could have come out of what you already spent last year, because you were spending it on those clients that they'll be looking after. And if it's a personnel issue, you've removed that responsibility from you back onto the client, the person who is hiring, and it self-monitors itself. If you have a client who is continually requiring the acute care system, you quickly begin to learn they're not receiving the proper care. You can step in at that point. This all leads to why this program should be implemented immediately. So I would like some thoughts around that and clarification from you.
Thank you. The Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And indeed, the honourable member has done a very effective job of advocating on behalf of this particular program, and he's been very persuasive in the arguments that he has presented. And the decision that has been taken this year with respect to the initial investment of $500,000 is a decision that is is viewed not as a final amount of money that would be invested in this program, but we will do, as I indicated earlier, a complete evaluation of our needs. We're looking at, for instance, the number of people who are currently in long-term care facilities to see whether a home care setting, a self-directed care program might not be a better option for them. And we do not want to take the decision to commit the funds to that until such time as we have done the analysis that we feel is necessary. And I don't anticipate that analysis taking that much longer to complete, so that as we bring forward a budget next year, I'm sure the honourable member is going to see the numbers being different, and the number of clients that would be served as being quite different compared to what it is now.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Annapolis.
Just one more question on this issue. The 9 that are presently in the program, will they be moved into the Department of Health?
The Minister of Health.
The answer is yes.
The member from Annapolis.
Thank you. One of the concerns, or one of the highlights, I guess, one of the successes in my constituency is the Annapolis Community Health Center. I think it, quite frankly, should be held up as a model for the province. As you're well aware, they're now doing a collaborative practice, which the hospital is in the process of developing, where there will be a nurse practitioner, dietitian, 4 or 5 physicians will be moving into the facility. They'll be working on a salary basis, the new structure. I'm wondering, is that the model that we're going to be seeing across Nova Scotia? Is that, will we begin to see those developed in other parts of Nova Scotia? It is it's one that is being received very well in the community, and it's a true testament, quite frankly, to the physicians and the nurses and the people of the Annapolis Community Health Center that this has gone off so well. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
The Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the honourable member for his comments about the new facility and program that's being offered in Annapolis. It's certainly one that the Department of Health is very excited about, and we were very pleased to be able to work with the District Health Authority in accommodating the financing of that facility, because it did require a little bit of imagination and changes in regulations in order to allow that to happen. And we did expedite that happening because we felt that this model was one that deserved to be implemented and evaluated. And it is one of a number of models that are being implemented across the province. We're looking forward to the investment that's currently taking place in Liverpool with respect to the Queen's facility that will be operating, and we're anxious to see the best practices that emerge. But what is important about all of these models is that they are models that have come from the community, and as a result of that community input, what fits for Annapolis may not be precisely what would fit for another part of the province. So it's appropriate for there to be flexibility relative to these models, but some core elements, of course, are an important part of it. And the fact that you have various healthcare professionals gathered and there's a collaborative practice taking place, and that you have numbers of physicians being able to provide these services, then it creates an environment where healthcare professionals are not put in a situation where they're being overworked because they're receiving alternate funding programs. Then there is time for them to spend with their patients, and spend more time with the patients. But when it's appropriate that only a nurse is required in order to be able to serve the needs of that patient, then the nurse is employed to be able to do that, freeing up physician time for other things. And to go back to a phrase I used earlier, in the estimates today. These are models that allow our professionals to work at the highest level, highest skill level that they have in order to be able to provide the healthcare service to individuals. So I appreciate the comments of the honourable member. This indeed is a very exciting model with respect to the delivery of healthcare, and we have more that are being developed in the province, and as we move in that direction, we will start to make real progress with respect to primary healthcare in the province.
Thank you. Minister, recognize the member from Annapolis.
And I appreciate those comments. And I think one of the reasons that the health center has been so successful is the fact of the community involvement and the community input and them taking ownership of it, really. You know, with all the changes that have taken place in healthcare throughout the western part of the valley, quite frankly, that's why I'm standing here, has been the changes that happened in healthcare. But they, have, as a community, have adapted and have accepted some of those changes and said, how can we do the best with what's still here? One of the other things in my constituency, I also have Soldiers Memorial Hospital. And when you look at the district health authority and the Department of Health, there seems to be a vision for a regional facility. You ask anyone about it, you know, what do you envision for a regional facility, and they can tell you. You ask them to describe a community health care center, and they can do that for you. It's when you get to a small community hospital is where the problems start. No one seems to be able to give you a good description of what they envision a small community hospital look like, what services are provided, all the number of, you know, how many doctors will be there, all those kinds of things. And that's created quite a bit of anxiety in the east end of my constituency around soldiers, and with some concern. So I'm wondering, has your department had any contact with the Annapolis Valley Health Authority on soldiers, but also on a vision for a small community hospital?
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of Health.
Including the inpatient addiction center.
Yeah.
The Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the honourable member, I think, appropriately identifies a situation where a facility has been impacted by changes in the way we deliver health care, and the traditional view of a hospital, quote unquote, is something that communities have considerable difficulty in accepting, because traditionally we have tended to think of healthcare, the measure of healthcare, as being measured by the number of beds. And increasingly, as the honourable member pointed out when he made reference to the primary health care initiative in Annapolis, that is no longer an apt measurement of the healthcare, or the measure of the healthcare that is being delivered in communities. So when you look at a facility that has, previously been operated as a traditional hospital, in the historic sense of a hospital, and as that facility sort of changes in terms of being an integral part of the delivery of healthcare services within a community, then there are certain challenges. There are, first of all, challenges with respect to the decision makers who are attempting to look at that facility and find the most efficient use of it relative to the whole district. And of course, the challenge of the community being able to understand what's happening to their traditional asset, and for the community to be comfortable with the fact that the way that facility is being used is appropriate to the needs of the community, and that is a real challenge. But I can tell the honourable member that in that facility, the current belief is that emergency services will be provided there. There will be inpatient bed and diagnostic services. There will be addictions unit for the district. Those have been identified to date. Now, there are some other potential services that are being examined. I'm reluctant to be specific because if they don't develop, then you know, they don't develop, and somebody might suggest that I had promised that they would be provided. So I don't want to put myself in that situation. But I provided a list. That's not necessarily the complete list. I'll put it that way.
The member from Annapolis.
I would never hold you to anything that you say in here, brother. I've been here long enough to realize that everything out of here is not actual factual. Well, actually, this is actually a much better setting than question period. I'm actually getting answers today in question period. It's if you get an answer, it's a surprise. One of the issues around, you mentioned around the emergency and the outpatients in soldiers, and it's actually been closed once, twice, I think, this past year around, and part of that is around physicians. It's a major issue, not only in my constituency, but around Nova Scotia. The age of the physicians who use Soldiers Memorial Hospital is getting up there. They're wanting to have to slow their practice down a bit. You know, they're getting to that stage of their career. I want to know from your department, and I'll speak specifically of Annapolis, but I know you can't talk directly to that, but around what you are doing for physician recruitment in rural parts of this province.
Thank you for the question. Direct the question to the Minister of Health.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
You need with every district.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and that's an ongoing challenge. And as quickly, well, I won't say it quite that way because I think we've made some progress. We've certainly made progress in